Good morning again, everyone. I don't know what happened, but it started doing what you all said, buffering. So, you have to be careful when you're playing music, I suppose. But that's a karaoke version, so it's not the real deal. But they take no chances. That's one of the biggest hits they had. Um, I met the Temptations anywhere between the ages of 14 and 16 years old. And I feel that we have to be in charge of our own musical history. And my fear is that they will be forgotten. Or, I was watching these young people, the twins that do reaction, and some of the people that they've never heard of really amazed me. I was surprised that they hadn't heard of so many people and groups and entertainers in my generation. But when I met them, it was after the song My Girl had just become a huge hit. And I met them as a fan, like I said, between 14 and 16 years old. And they were performing at a club called The Trip. And back then, the trip meant uh, taking acid or that sort of thing. That's what a trip meant at that time. And it changed into tripping in the black community to mean something completely different. But it was so exciting for me to be at that club. But I had no business there because I was underage. But nevertheless, I was there. Eddie, Paul, Melvin, Otis, David, and later Dennis. Now, if you go to my playlist, you'll find a playlist of the Temptations, and I will put a link in the description of a video I made that of a statue that they did for Eddie in his hometown. But you know, they were so different. They broke new ground. They were all over 6 feet tall, and on stage, they moved as one. And Paul was the choreographer at the time when they first got out there. And there had not been a male group with such synchronized choreography to that point. We were, we were blown away. Okay? Imagine always seeing, you know, male groups singing, and they're all at the microphone, but they're just standing there. And these guys, they were moving and doing these steps and routines. Oh, it was so exciting. And the Temptation Walk, that became a dance that we all did back then. And their first milestone, when everyone knew they had made it, was their appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show. Back then, for black people, that's when you knew you made it, because there weren't a whole lot of black folks on the Ed Sullivan Show. Now, in the description, I have a link to that appearance, or one of them, because I think they went back again another times. But now, keeping it a buck, as a young teen, I was seriously crushing on Eddie. As I told y'all before, I asked Eddie, "How old are you?" And Eddie peeped that question for what it was and responded, "Too old for you. Checkmate." Now, I was allowed a lot of access because I was indeed like a little sister to a couple of them, but they also knew there was no guile in me. I wasn't after anything. I didn't even know how to be after anything. So we'll start with Melvin. Melvin was always distant and stayed quietly in the background. And you have to understand the amount of females coming at them was huge. They were everywhere. They were in the hotel lobbies. They were on the hotel floors, sitting, doing sit-ins and that sort of thing. But Melvin was pretty distant. He kept to himself a lot, and this is not an expose or anything like that because the secrets and the things that I know about them that I learned being around them, those will go with me to my grave. I'm just giving some insight on some really exciting times for me because of an exciting group. And Otis, he was a Scorpio. He too was quiet. And I think a lot of them, they were leery about me because of my age. And so, they didn't want anybody to say that they were hanging out with an underage person or that sort of thing. And in hindsight, I get that because you can see what's happening now with people that, you can't take any chances. But they were never rude to me or anything like that. I mean, Melvin was never rude to me. Melvin was the kind of person who he would speak and say hello and be cordial. And he'd pose with you for a photograph or something like that. But, that was the extent of my interactions with Melvin. Otis was a Scorpio and very silent. And as you can see over time, that he was the one who was about the business. David, at the time, he was the wild child, and his talent was unbelievable. And his voice was among the two in the group that propelled them to the crossover success they enjoyed. But when I would see David, I saw the struggle, the drugs, and you could see it on him how he deteriorated while he was with the group. And there's books that Otis wrote and that sort of thing that he didn't show up and that sort of thing. And drugs got him. And eventually it got him fired from the group. And us purists didn't like it. But enter Dennis. And I remember seeing Dennis in LA, and we were upstairs in the rooms, and he was nervous. He had huge shoes to fill. Just think about it. David Ruffin, he's going to fill his shoes. And most of us were still smarting from the loss of David because it would never be the same for us. And, Dennis was he turned out to be really good, but he had his own style and he held his own. But he was so nervous that it was kind of funny because he was nervous just around us. And we were just friends. And that was amazing to me that he was nervous around us. Now, Eddie, his falsetto was so beautiful and so fine tuned. Oh my, I still marvel at his voice. And Eddie was so funny. His quips were always on point and comedic. He was the one who seemed to be both unaffected and amazed at the same time regarding their success. And after he left the group, I would still go see him at, smaller clubs because he wasn't getting the concerts. And the last time I saw him, I was pregnant. And he asked from the stage, "Is that going to be my godchild?" And I was so embarrassed, but I just smiled. I didn't know what else to do. But that's how Eddie was. He knew who his people were. He knew who had been there for him when he was up. And there we were, right there, still supporting him when he was starting over. But he was a beautiful person, but he was really funny, you know. Now, Paul, as I said, was the choreographer, and that's his photo in the thumbnail. And I'm not in the photo because I took the photo. He was like a big brother to me. And Paul saved me with his wonderful advice, and I will be forever grateful. He left the group for health reasons, which affected his performance. It was the drinking. And it got so bad that when he would perspire, you could smell the alcohol. It was hurtful. But he was a beautiful human being, you know, who always had time for friends and for fans. And I was crushed when he died. And they say he killed himself, but I will never believe that for several reasons. But those 7 or 8 years that I knew them were great for me. I mean, front row seats at the concerts. I never got to go to any after parties. And I remember Eddie would say, you don't need to be involved with nothing like that. You know, just to the point, you know. But I'm still angry and hurt as to how they died and how young they were. Melvin died at 52 years old of heart failure in 1995. In 1978, he was shot in his hand and leg while trying to stop a man from stealing his car in LA. He had trouble walking because of rheumatoid arthritis, and he ultimately died in a coma because of seizures. 52 years old. How young is that? David died at 50. After he left the group, and after Eddie left the group, and Dennis left the group, they hooked up and did European tours. And to me, Paul, David, and Eddie were the heart of the group as far as talent is concerned. And but the money from those performances, according to my information, led to his death because he went when they returned from overseas. He went on a drug binge and he overdosed. And Paul died at 34. And according to news reports, he died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. I do not believe it, but I have no firsthand knowledge, so this is just my opinion. But he always called me his baby, and I knew he cared about me like a little sister. And even a couple of the autographs he signed, he would put to my baby. I hurt because I never got the chance to tell him thank you. Thank you for your advice. Thank you for saving me and telling me exactly what was going on in the world, in life, and it really helped. Eddie's death was also painful. All the money he had helped make for Motown, he had to raise money to get lung surgery as a result of lung cancer. And they made them a lot of money. He should not have had to do that. And that still makes me angry. And I wasn't in touch with him during that time, but he died from the lung cancer. And I only wish that I could have been there to support him. But he toured until the end, and he died in 1992. So most of the Temptations, the original classic five, didn't make it to 60. 52, 34, 52, 50. How young they were to pass away. And that's sad to me. And I'm just happy to have been in the room and part of those heady days. I moved on with my own life, my music career, But the love I received, the acceptance, and the friendships, I will always remember. So I got to put this out there in the universe now. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you so much.